At my uncle's funeral, I wasn't just grieving, I was being laughed at. My cousins whispered behind my back, mocking me for being a waiter, saying I'd never amount to anything. Every look, every smirk reminded me I didn't belong. But then the lawyer opened the will. And in that single moment, everything turned upside down. What you're about to hear is the story of how the family who humiliated me learned the truth they never saw coming. I was standing behind the makeshift catering counter at the funeral home, the smell of over-extracted espresso clinging to my apron like a mistake I couldn't wash out. The chapel room had that soft hotel glow chandelier set to comfort, carpets thick enough to swallow footsteps, lilies breathing their sweet, headachy perfume into the air. People spoke in careful half-whispers that still somehow found their way under my skin. Make mine a latte light on the milk this time. Don't screw it up like last week. Myra didn't look at me when she ordered. She glided by in a sequined black dress, lips lacquered the color of a stop sign. If grief had a red carpet, she just stepped onto it. I ground the beans and listened to the hiss and groan of the machine, pretending the sound could drown out the old rhythm of this family, who bought the newest SUV, who closed on the bigger house, who'd crushed it at work. Me? I worked tables. I was the guy who refilled waters and apologized for wait times. Around here, that translated into no ambition. Kyle drifted over with the casual cruelty of a bored cat. Still serving coffee at family events? Careful not to spill on the carpet. Costs more than your paycheck. He pitched it just loud enough for the cluster behind him to hear. Laughter clicked like cutlery. I set a tray of pastries on the lace-covered sideboard and pretended not to notice the way conversations shifted when I passed, eyes sliding across me like I was a smudge on the mirror. I kept moving. Keep the hands busy, I told myself. Busy hands survive. Up front, Uncle Walter's portrait rested on a silver easel, the glass catching the warm light. His smile was as I remembered it, tight at the edges, patient like he was telling a joke slowly to see if you'd earn the punchline. Thin glasses. Deep lines fanning from his eyes. A gentleness people mistook for softness, until they tried to push him and discovered granite. My mother sat off to the side, small and neat in a navy dress, twisting a tissue into a rope. She was Walter's niece, which made me his grandnephew, though we'd called him uncle long before I knew what probate meant. When I looked over, she lifted her eyes and gave me the kind of nod that says everything and nothing. You're fine. Keep going. She knew about my walks with Walter. On slow afternoons I'd drive him to the lake, and we'd do the circuit at the speed of honesty. The cane clicked, the gravel complained, and he asked me questions no one else did. Not how much are you making now? But what kind of day did you have? And what did the coffee taste like this morning? He said I listened better than most. I didn't know what to do with a compliment that simple. It felt like a coat that fit too well. One October we got caught in a sudden rainstorm outside the diner with the neon coffee cup that never turned off. We stood under the awning while water hammered the sidewalk into a mirror. Don't turn the heater up too high, he told me when we got back in the car, grin tilted. Heat makes people drowsy. Bad things happen when you stop paying attention. He dug into his pocket and brought out a coin, old and smoothed by 1,000 thumbs. He pressed it into my palm and closed my fingers over it. Keep it. Not to spend. To remember. Things that wear down from being touched are the things that lived. The coin has lived in my wallet ever since, cold and patient as a truth I could hold. 3 o'clock, Kyle announced to no one and everyone, pacing past the coffee urns like a town crier. That's when the reading starts. Try not to get crumbs on the legal documents, all right? He smirked at me like we were sharing a joke. I won't be in the room, I said, more to the air than to him. Of course you won't, Myra said, as if this were the natural order of things. Don't distract the grown-ups. I carried my tray back to the prep room. Cream walls. Steel shelves. A fridge clicking to itself in the corner. I sat on the wobbly wooden chair and pressed the heel of my hand against my sternum where the words had lodged. Parasite. Leech. Not yet spoken out loud but hovering, ready. My chest felt hollow like someone had scooped out the middle of me and left the shell. A soft knock. Come in, I said, straightening. The door swung and Lawyer Carter stepped in, silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense twist, glasses low on her nose, black coat tailored like a decision. She smelled faintly of paper and rain. Forgive the intrusion, she said. Her voice was warm without being familiar. I wanted to ask if you're doing all right. I'm fine. The old automatic lie. She studied me, and I had the sense she read people like contracts, quietly, accurately, no need to add adjectives. Walter spoke highly of you, she said. He told me you listened. People underestimate how rare that is. Heat climbed my throat. Thank you. She nodded at the sheet tray cooling on the counter. We'll begin at 3. If you'd prefer not to be inside, you don't have to be. But you're welcome to stand at the back. The door will be open. She paused. He wanted it that way. When she left, I stayed still and counted the beeps from the fridge. My pulse slowed enough for thoughts to step in instead of sprint. I reached into my pocket and pinched the coin between my thumb and forefinger. The metal was cool. It steadied me. If people ask what you have, tell them you have time. Time is valuable. He'd said that once, amused, like he was slipping me a key and daring me to find the lock. The murmur outside changed, voices angling toward one room, footsteps collecting, the low scrape of chairs. I washed my hands even though they were already clean, lined cups on a tray in a perfect grid, refold napkins that didn't need refolding. Then I picked up the tray and walked back out into the hum. I passed a cluster of relatives absorbed in their favorite topic, themselves. Lawyer Carter said it's all very straightforward, a woman in pearls said, which meant she hoped it would be. Walter was nothing if not organized. Tradition matters, an uncle announced to his audience. The house should stay where it belongs. Bloodlines aren't just for horses. Kyle practiced a magnanimous face in the glass, the corners of his mouth fighting not to smile. Myra took a photo of the floral arrangement, tilted her head, took another. Grief content. I placed carafes of water and little pyramids of lemon wedges on a side table, then drifted to the heavy door of the small conference room they'd set aside for the reading. The wood was dark and soft under my fingers, varnish worn smooth where hands had pulled it open for years. A narrow seam of light ran the length of the frame. Through it I could see the long mahogany table inside, the kind that looked like it had opinions, and the people orbiting it as if possession could happen through proximity. Myra twirled her ring, Kyle bounced his heel. Uncle Don worked his jaw like he was chewing on a memory he'd told too many times. At the head of the table, Carter placed a thick folder bound in leather, the edges of the pages gilt. She looked like calm in a storm others hadn't noticed yet. I didn't push the door. I didn't need to. I set the tray on a side credenza, wiped my palms against my apron, and took one step back to where the shadows pooled. A vantage point without a name. I'd done my whole life from places like this. The grandfather clock in the corner of the chapel began to chime, slow and dignified, as if it were offended by the very idea of being rushed. 1, 2, 3. The sound rolled down the hallway and into me. I pressed the coin in my pocket until the ridges woke my skin. Shall we begin? Carter said, her voice carrying with less effort than any of ours ever had. Silence found a chair. In that held breath just before the first word, I thought about the way rain looked when the wind sliced it sideways. About the click of Walter's cane and the way he tilted his head to listen like the world had earned it. About all the times I'd felt small in rooms like this, and how small wasn't the same as unworthy. From my post at the back wall I could see everything. The polished mahogany table stretched like a stage, the players already in costume. Myra gleaming with self-satisfaction, Kyle vibrating with nervous energy, Dawn swelling with self-importance. Lawyer Carter adjusted her glasses, the room settling like a lid on a pot about to boil. Formal will readings aren't typical in the U.S., she said calmly. But Mr. Avery requested clarity. We'll go line by line. Please, no interruptions. Of course, Don said, his voice a hammer in a room built for whispers. He leaned back, fingers drumming against his belly like he was keeping time for an orchestra that would only ever play his tune. Myra dabbed at her lipstick, already smiling as if the ink was dry in her favor. Kyle rolled his pen between his fingers, pupils darting, like a gambler deciding which horse to back in a rigged race. Carter began with the easy stuff: charitable donations, small heirlooms, a list of art pieces. Eyes glazed over. Only when she shifted papers and said, "The primary residence at Ashwood Lane," did the tension spike. "Will be left to Myra Avery." Gasps disguised as coughs. Myra pressed a hand to her pearls, eyes shining. Oh, Uncle Walter," she whispered just loud enough. Kyle's laugh was dry. "Figures." Don's lips tightened. "Well, she is the eldest. Tradition counts for something." But the way his jaw clenched said tradition tasted bitter. Next came the lake house. "The Cedar Falls property will be transferred to Kyle Avery." Kyle fist pumped before catching himself, muttering, "Knew it," under his breath. Myra's smile twitched at the edges. Don's face darkened another shade. Then Carter turned a page. "The majority stake in Avery Holdings, including the company assets," she paused, "will be disclosed in the final section of the will." The room erupted like a struck beehive. "What do you mean, final section?" Don barked. "That's ridiculous," Myra snapped. Kyle slapped his pen onto the table. "Come on. Order." Carter didn't raise her voice, but somehow hers was the only one heard. "We'll get there." They sank back, but the air now had claws. While Carter read through smaller items, savings bonds, furniture, jewelry, their whispers coiled tighter. Myra leaned toward her husband, murmuring about renovations she'd already planned for the house. Kyle scribbled notes on a legal pad, arrows and dollar signs scrawled like spells. Don muttered about backbone and loyalty to anyone who'd listen. Then came the boasts, each designed not just to convince the lawyer, but each other. "I handled the budget for Walter's charity gala last year," Myra announced suddenly, voice syrupy. "He told me I had a head for numbers." Kyle snorted. "He told me my restructuring deck was the sharpest work he'd seen in years. Late nights, pivot tables, stress tests, I earned his respect." Don slapped the table, leaning forward. "Respect?" "He wouldn't have had a company to restructure if I hadn't co-signed the loans in the early days. He said it himself, I was the backbone." Each claim stacked on the other like closing arguments in a trial where the judge had already left. Carter kept reading unbothered, her tone a metronome against their chaos. I watched it all quiet, leaning into the wall. Their hunger filled the room, spilling over the edges of the table, dripping onto the carpet. Walter's words came back. "People show you who they are when they think the prize is close." They were showing everything. The tension only grew when Carter detailed small bequests to extended family. A bracelet here. Painting there. Each time a name was read, faces twisted, triumph, envy, disdain. Nobody said thank you. By the time Carter straightened the final set of pages, the room was lean and sharp as a blade. "We will now move," she said evenly, "to the last section of the will." This covers the residual estate, including Avery Holdings, the primary financial accounts, and all holdings not otherwise specified. Every breath in the room caught like a hook. Myra leaned forward so far her pearls clicked against the table. Don flexed his fists, knuckles whitening. Kyle's knee bounced, rattling the pen on the tabletop. And me? My hand went to my pocket, pressing the coin Walter had given me until its worn grooves etched into my skin. Carter reached for the final envelope. The rustle of the paper was the loudest sound in the room. She broke the seal. Unfolded the page. Carter's voice sliced the silence like a scalpel. I, Walter H. Avery, hereby bequeath the remainder of my estate, including my controlling stake in Avery Holdings, all financial accounts, and associated assets to my nephew Daniel Hart. For a moment the words didn't register. They hovered above us like a flock of startled birds, wings beating, waiting to land. Then they did. And the room detonated. What? Myra's voice cracked an octave higher than usual. Her compact mirror slipped from her hand and clattered onto the polished table. You've misread it, Kyle said quickly, as if denial could undo ink. His chair screeched as he half rose, pen stabbing the air. This is fraud, Don bellowed, palm slamming the table so hard water glasses jumped. His face was a furnace, veins in his forehead corded tight. I couldn't move. My chest locked, my ears filled with rushing static. My name, spoken aloud in Walter's last words. I'd braced for humiliation, for scraps, but never for this. Carter, unruffled, repeated. The will is unambiguous. The residual estate, including Avery Holdings, passes to Daniel Hart. Myra's lip curled. This is sentimental nonsense. He was confused. Manipulated. Daniel was a waiter, for God's sake. Barely family, Don snarled, jabbing a finger toward me. Walter would never hand him the company. This has to be challenged. Kyle leaned across the table, eyes blazing. He cozied up to Walter. That's what happened. While we were actually running things, he played the humble routine, pretending to care. It was strategy, wasn't it, Daniel? Your payday plan. Their accusations crashed into me like waves against a cliff. Parasite. Fraud. Manipulator. The words they'd always thought now screamed. My fingers dug into my pocket, clenching the coin until the edges scored my palm. There's honesty in the bitter aftertaste, Walter had said. Don't be afraid to taste it. Carter lifted a separate page. Mr. Avery included a personal statement to accompany his will. The room hushed, unwilling but unable to resist. Her voice softened, taking on the weight of his. To my family, I leave you what you valued most. Myra, you always admired the house more than the man inside it. Kyle, your ambition may yet find use at the lake. Don, you've had your fill of tales about the early years. We both know which ones are true. As for the remainder, I leave it to Daniel. Not for his degrees or titles, he has none. But because he gave me what none of you did, time. He listened not to gain but to care. I trust he will honor what I built, not out of greed but gratitude. Every syllable was a hammer. Myra's face went blotchy, tears smudging mascara into dark streaks. He wasn't in his right mind. Kyle scoffed, but his laugh broke halfway. This will never hold up in court. I'll contest every line. Don surged halfway out of his chair. This is theft, plain and simple. You think you can steal my legacy? My mother's sob cracked the noise. Heads whipped toward her. She pressed the tissue to her eyes, shoulders trembling, but when she looked at me her gaze was steady. Proud. I swallowed, throat raw. My pulse thundered. For once I couldn't hide in the back. My voice shook, but I forced it into the space. Walter trusted me, I said. I never asked for this. I never expected it. But I won't apologize because he saw me for who I was, not what I had. The room stilled for a fraction of a second, like an audience stunned that a background character had spoken. Then Myra shot to her feet. You think you're better than us now? No, I said quietly. I think Walter believed I could be better than what you're being right now. Her mouth open, closed like a fish gasping. Don cursed under his breath, pacing in a tight circle. Kyle shook his head, scribbling notes furiously, as though fury written down could become law. The noise rose again, each voice clawing over the other. Threats of lawsuits, accusations of manipulation, demands for explanations. The mahogany table trembled under the weight of fists and fury. Through it all, Carter remained calm. She closed the folder with deliberate care, the soft thud of leather and paper louder than all their yelling. This will is legal, notarized, witnessed, and filed. It will stand. Her words didn't stop them. Myra hissed about parasites. Don swore vengeance. Kyle muttered about judges and loopholes. But for me the air shifted. The coin in my hand warmed, the hollow in my chest filled. Because underneath their rage I finally understood. Walter hadn't just left me money. He'd left me proof. Proof that being overlooked didn't mean being unseen. I stood taller. Their storm could rage, but I was still standing. And yet I knew, this wasn't over. Not for them. The sound of Carter's folder shutting echoed like a gunshot. For half a heartbeat the room froze in disbelief. Then Don erupted. This is fraud. His voice was thunder. He shoved back his chair so hard it slammed into the wall. You conned him, Daniel. You slithered your way in when he was weak. This will not stand. His face was beet red, sweat beading on his temples, spit catching in his beard. Myra sprang up too, mascara streaking down her cheeks. A waiter. A waiter gets everything? This is a joke. I've put in years of effort, charity galas, managing the family image, running events. And you? She jabbed a manicured finger at me. You served coffee. You wiped tables. That's all. Kyle barked a laugh, ugly and sharp. Don't act shocked, Myra. He played you too. The humble act, the sad little underdog routine, all fake. He knew exactly what he was doing. Cozy up to the old man, pretend to care, cash in big. His eyes flicked to me, narrow, accusing. Admit it. This was your plan all along. Their words whipped the air into a frenzy. Parasite, fraud, thief. My chest burned. My palms sweated. But then under the storm Walter's voice came back. Patience is the truest test of character. I slammed my hand flat on the table. Enough. The word startled even me. It cracked through their shouting like lightning, silencing them mid-breath. All eyes turned. My voice shook, but I forced it out louder this time. You want to believe I tricked him? Fine. But you weren't there. Not one of you sat with him in the park when he could barely walk. Not one of you listened when he told the same story for the 100th time just because he wanted to feel heard. You weren't there when he pressed this into my hand. I yanked the coin from my pocket, holding it up, the worn edges glinting. And told me things that wear down from being touched are the things that lived. The room held its breath. Don sneered. Pretty speeches won't save you in court. You're right, I said, my voice steadier now. It won't. But it doesn't need to. Because Walter didn't leave me this because of speeches. He left it because he saw me. And you'll never forgive him for that, because it means he didn't see you. Myra's face crumpled. Kyle's pen snapped in half between his fingers. Don cursed low, fists trembling. Carter cleared her throat softly, her calm cutting through the tension. Mr. Avery's will is legally binding. Contest it if you wish, but you'll lose. I suggest you accept his wishes. That only poured more gasoline. We'll sue. Myra spat, her voice shrill. I'll drag this through court until the ink fades, Kyle shouted. You'll choke on that fortune, Dawn growled, pointing at me like a curse. One by one they stormed out. Myra's heels cracked against the floor like gunshots. Kyle slammed the door so hard the glass rattled. Dawn's muttering trailed down the hallway until it vanished into the murmur of the funeral crowd outside. And then silence. The silence was heavier than the shouting had been. I let my hand drop, the coin warm now against my skin. My knees wobbled, but I stayed standing. My mother touched my arm, her eyes shining with tears. He saw you, she whispered. That's what matters. I nodded, unable to speak. Carter approached, holding something small. A sealed envelope, thick and deliberate. My name scrawled across it in Walter's shaky handwriting. He left this for you, she said. My throat tightened. That night, after the crowds had thinned and the city had gone quiet, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The envelope lay before me. My hands hovered over it like it might burn. Finally, I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, the ink uneven but steady enough to carry his voice across time. Daniel, if you're reading this, then you know what I chose. Don't waste your time proving yourself to them. They'll never see what they don't want to. Spend it wisely with people who need listening to. Build something better, not bigger. Use the company if you wish, or let it go, but never let it own you. And remember, time is more precious than any fortune I could leave you. Walter. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I pressed the coin into my palm, warm and familiar. Outside my window, the night stretched wide and still. Somewhere, Myra was pacing her mansion. Kyle was drafting legal threats. Don was nursing his fury. Let them. They could rage until their voices gave out. Here in the quiet, Walter's gift settled into me like a heartbeat. It wasn't the company. It wasn't the houses or the accounts. It was the freedom to choose. To choose patience. To choose kindness. To choose time. I whispered into the empty kitchen. Thank you. And for once, the bitterness in my throat wasn't something to spit out. It was something to savor, clean, sharp, honest. I finally understood. They mocked me for being a waiter. They humiliated me at my uncle's funeral. But when the will was read, their laughter turned to silence. Walter didn't just leave me an inheritance, he left me a lesson. That time is more valuable than any fortune. And that lesson is one I'll carry forever. Now I want to hear from you. If this had been your family, if they mocked you, betrayed you, and then lost everything, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Leave your answer in the comments below. And if you want more stories of toxic families, shocking betrayals, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story might just be even wilder than this one.